Truckers see a lot of strange things on America's highways. But what happened at Golden Valley truck stop that summer changed everything. A small-town truck stop became a battleground when a notorious biker gang chose the wrong driver to intimidate. They didn't know he was a former combat medic. They didn't know about his particular set of skills, and they certainly didn't know how far a tight-knit trucking community would go to protect their own. What started as simple harassment spiraled into the exposure of a criminal empire turning a peaceful truck stop into the front line of a war nobody expected. By the time the dust settled, the FBI would be involved, lives would be changed forever, and a group of small-town truckers would become legends in their own right. Before we continue with the story, tell us where you're watching from. If you like this story, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have a special story for you, The Morning Sun. Cast. Long shadows across Golden Valley truck stop as Jack Reeves conducted his pre-trip inspection. His weathered hands moved with practiced precision over his rig's vital components, each touch a silent conversation with the machine he trusted for over 500,000 miles. The chrome finish of his Peterbilt 389 reflected the early light at surface, still bearing the morning dew. The parking lot was beginning to stir with the usual morning routines of truckers. Preparing for another day on the road, steam rose from coffee cups' engines hummed to life, and the smell of diesel mixed with the AR aroma of fresh breakfast wafting from Sarah's diner. The familiarity of it all masked the tension that would soon change everything. Jack methodically checked his load of medical supplies, bound for St. Mary's Hospital in Carson City. He'd been running this route for 3 years now, earning a reputation for never being late, regardless of weather or road conditions. The other drivers called him the Ghost, always there when needed but never drawing attention to himself. A young driver struggled with his trailer coupling nearby, cursing under his breath. Jack watched for a moment, then walked over his boots, crunching on the gravel. The kid couldn't have been more than 25, still green behind the ears, need a hand. Jack's voice carried the quiet authority of experience. The young driver wiped sweat from his brow. Can't get this damn thing to line up, right? Jack positioned himself by the trailer, guiding the rookie through the process with patient and destruction his hands, which had once stitched wounds under enemy fire in Afghanistan, now demonstrated the subtle art of perfect trailer alignment. The younger man watched intently, soaking in the lesson. "Thanks, mister. You make it look easy." Jack Reeves, he offered his hand. Everyone was new, eh? Once, just remember to take your time and do it right. As they talked, the first rumble of motorcycles echoed from the highway. Jack's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted subtly. Years of combat experience had taught him to read situations before they developed, and something about those approaching engines struck a discordant note in his mind inside Sarah's diner. The morning regulars looked up from their coffee cups. Sarah herself stood behind the counter, her experienced eyes tracking the growing sound. She'd run this place for 15 years, long enough to know the difference between ordinary bikers and trouble. The motorcycles pulled into the lot, their glinting harshly in the morning sun. 6 riders, all wearing patches, identifying them as members of the Steel Serpent MC. They moved with the deliberate swagger of men used to commanding respect through fear. The young driver Jack had just helped tensed visibly, but Jack placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Go finish your breakfast," he said quietly. "Some situations are better watched from a distance." The bikers dismounted their boots, hitting the pavement with practice synchronization. Their leader, a tall man with a silver-streaked beard and arms covered in faded tattoos, surveyed the truck stop like a predator, assessing new territory. His eyes lingered on Jack's rig, noting the veteran sticker and the pristine condition of the vehicle inside the diner. Sarah moved along the counter, topping off coffee cups and speaking in low tones to her regulars. The trucking community had its own way of communicating, and warnings were already spreading through text messages and CB radio. Something was different about these bikers. They weren't just passing through. Jack continued his inspection, his movements unhurried but precise. He'd seen their type before. Both in combat zones and on civilian roads, they were testing boundaries, looking for weaknesses. His hand brushed against the side of his cab, feeling the familiar texture of the vehicle that had become more than just transportation. It was his home, his livelihood, and if necessary, his fortress. The lead biker started toward the diner, but not before casting another long look at Jack's rig. Their eyes met briefly across the parking lot, an unspoken exchange that carried weight. The biker's lip curled slightly, a gesture of dismissal that Jack had seen too many times before. As the bikers disappeared into the diner, the young driver reappeared at Jack's side. "Those guys looked like serious trouble." "Trouble's what you make of it?" Jack replied, closing his inspection panel with a solid click. "Sometimes the best way to handle it is to be ready before it finds you." The morning sun climbed higher, burning away the last of the dew, but a different kind of chill had settled over Golden Valley truck stop in the distance. More motorcycle engines could be heard approaching. Jack reached into his cab and pulled out his log book, making careful notations while keeping his peripheral vision trained on the diner's entrance. Inside, Sarah's regulars maintained their routines. But there was a newfound attention to their movements, a careful positioning that spoke of experience with similar situations. They were truckers. Yes, but many were also veterans, former law enforcement, or simply men and women who'd learned the hard way that community meant standing together. The day was just beginning, but already the pieces were being set on a board that would soon become a battlefield. Jack Reeves checked his watch, noted his departure time, and settled in to wait. Sometimes the hardest part of any confrontation was knowing exactly when to make your move. A tense hour passed. At Golden Valley truck stop, the Steel Serpents had claimed a corner of Sarah's diner, their loud voices and occasional bursts of laughter cutting through the usual morning chatter. Regular customers found reasons to linger, their coffee cups never quite empty, their eyes alert beneath casual expressions. Jack Reeves sat in his rig, reviewing his delivery schedule while keeping the diner's entrance in view. His military training had taught him the value of patience, of watching and waiting before acting. The CB radio crackled with coded warnings from other drivers. More bikers had been spotted on the highways leading to Golden Valley. Inside the diner, Sarah worked with practiced efficiency, her movements calm, but her eyes sharp. 20 years of managing a truck stop diner had taught her to read trouble like an approaching storm. She'd seen the way the biker's leader, who called himself Razor, watched the parking lot through the window, particularly Jack's rig, more coffee. She asked, approaching their table with a fresh pot. Razor looked up, his weathered face creasing into what might have been a smile. "Friendly place you got here." "We try to be." Sarah's voice carried just the right mix of professional courtesy and care. "Full distance might be staying a while," Razor said, his eyes still on the parking lot. "Good spot for business?" The word hung in the air like smoke, heavy. With implication, Sarah topped off their cups without comment, but her mind was already racing. She'd heard rumors about the Steel Serpents, about their business practices along the western trucking routes. Outside, Jack's CB radio crackled again. "Gee, ard, jumma video today." You copy got a situation. Brewing down at marker 142. Jack picked up the handset copy that, what's the word? Local boys spotted. 3 more bikes heading your way. These snakes are setting up shop over understood. Keep your eyes open. The conversation triggered a memory from his deployment. A hot day in Kahar province, watching enemy forces slowly surrounding a village. The same patient predatory approach. Jack's hand unconsciously touched the medical bag he always kept. Within reach of habit from his combat medic days, a young waitress hurried out of the diner, her face tight with concern. She made a beeline for Jack's truck, glancing nervously over her shoulder. Mr. Reeves, she kept her voice low. Sarah asked me to tell you they're asking questions about the regular delivery schedules, especially the medical supply runs. Jack nodded slowly. The piece were starting to fit together. The Steel Serpents had a reputation for hijacking valuable cargo, and medical supplies were worth their weight in gold. On the black market, his mind drifted back to another memory, this one from his final tour. His unit had been ambushed while transporting medical supplies to a forward operating base. The ensuing firefight had taught him that sometimes the most valuable cargo attracted the worst kind of attention. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us now. Back to the story, the diner's door swung open, and Razor emerged with his crew. They moved with deliberate slowness, taking in every detail of the truck stop. 2 more motorcycles rumbled into the lot, their riders wearing the same Steel Serpent patches. Jack watched through his side mirror as Razor approached his rig. The biker's reflection grew larger, his swagger unmistakable. A knock on the driver's side door broke the attention. Nice rig, Razor called up military man. Huh. Jack rolled down his window part way. Something I can help you with, just being neighborly. Razor's smile didn't. Reach's eyes heard you make regular runs through here. Medical supplies, right? Valuable cargo. Just doing my job. Jobs can be dangerous these days. Lot of hijackings on these roads. Razor ran hand along the truck's polished surface. Shame if anything happened to such a nice rig. The threat was clear. But Jack's expression remained neutral. He'd faced down worse in Kandahar. Appreciate the concern. More motorcycles arrived, their engines echoing off the buildings. The Steel Serpents were establishing a presence, marking their territory inside the diner. Sarah was already on the phone, her voice slow and urgent as she spoke with the local sheriff. The trucking community had its own way of responding to threats. Drivers who had been preparing to leave found reasons to delay their departures. Others who hadn't planned to stop suddenly needed fuel or maintenance. The parking lot grew crowded with rigs, their drivers casual but watchful. Jack's phone buzzed with a text from Bobby Chin, a fellow veteran who ran security at Carson City Memorial Hospital. Word is, these snakes have been hitting medical shipments up and down the coast. 3 hospitals hit last month. Be careful, brother. The message confirmed. Jack's suspicions the Steel Serpents weren't just random troublemakers. They were organized, targeting specific shipments. Golden Valley's location made it a perfect staging ground for their operations. Razor and his crew mounted their bikes, but not before the leader cast one final look at Jack's truck. See you around, soldier boy. Keep that rig shiny as they roared away. Sarah emerged from the diner and crossed to Jack's truck. Her face was serious as she climbed up to the passenger side. Sheriff Thompson's on alert, but he's short-handed. Says there's not much he can do unless they actually break the law. She passed him a fresh coffee. They were asking about your schedule, Jack, and about the hospital, roads. Jack took the coffee. his mind already working through scenarios. They're testing the waters, seeing how we'll react. This isn't their first rodeo. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to call in some favors. Get word out to the veteran driver network. Jack pulled out his phone. These guys want to play games with medical supplies. They picked the wrong route. Sarah nodded, understanding the steel in his voice. She'd seen that look before in the eyes of other veterans who frequented her diner. It was the look of someone who'd found a new way to serve a new battle to fight. The sun was high now. The mornings, peace shattered by the rumble of departing motorcycles. But something else was building at Golden Valley Truck Stop, a quiet resistance, a coming together of a community that understood the importance of standing its ground. Jack started his engine, the powerful diesel. Coming to life with a familiar rumble, he had deliveries to make a schedule to keep. But as he pulled out onto the highway, his mind was already formulating plans, reaching back to lessons learned in combat, about defending what matters. The Steel Serpents had made their first move. They thought they were dealing with simple truck drivers, easy targets for their operation. But they'd failed to understand the bonds that held this community together. The strength that came from years of shared roads and mutual respect. And they definitely failed to understand Jack Reeves. The memories came back to Jack Reeves as he drove his route that day. 6 years ago in Afghanistan, his convoy had faced a similar threat. Local insurgents targeting medical supplies. He'd learned then that sometimes the best defense wasn't just about protecting the cargo, but about understanding the enemy's whole operation. The desert highway stretched before him, its shimming heat waves reminiscent of those distant battlefields. His satellite phone buzzed. Bobby Chen from Carson City Memorial. Jack got some intel for you. 3 more hospitals hit last week in Oregon. They're working their way south pattern. Yeah, and it's not just random hijackings. They're targeting specific medications. Someone's pulling the strings, giving them shopping lists. Jack processed this information as he watched a group of motorcycles appear in his rearview mirror. They kept their distance, but their presence was no coincidence. The Steel Serpents were mapping his route. His mind drifted back to another lesson from his military days. His commanding officer words echoed. Sometimes the best way to counter an ambush is to let them think they're the ones setting the trap back at Golden Valley. Sarah was holding court with a group of regular drivers. The informal network of truckers had been buzzing all morning with news about the Steel Serpents. They've got people inside the hospitals. One driver reported getting inventory lists, delivery schedules. This ain't some small-time operation. The miners' regulars included more than a few veterans. Tom Martinez, former Marine Corps, now hauling cross-country Mike Chen Army Rangers, running a fleet of his own. Sarah watched them exchange knowing looks. They'd seen this kind of coordinated threat before, just on different battlefields. The bikers returned throughout the day in small groups establishing a presence. They were professional about it. No outright threats, no obvious intimidation, just the constant reminder that they were watching. Waiting Jack's delivery to Carson City went smoothly, but he noticed more motorcycles in town than usual. The Steel Serpents were spreading out, positioning themselves along the major routes. As he unloaded the supplies, a hospital security guard approached Mr. Reeves. "Got something you should see in the security office." Bobby Chen played a surveillance video. It showed a recent hijacking in Oregon. The precision of the operation was military grade. These weren't ordinary criminals. They knew exactly what they were looking for. Bobby explained when straight for the high-value medications, someone's coordinating this whole thing. Jack studied the footage. "They're not just thugs on bikes. This is organized. DEA is involved now, but they're playing catch-up word. These guys have connections all the way up to major pharmaceutical distributors. The drive back to Golden Valley gave Jack time to think the Steel Serpents weren't just targeting his route. They were setting up a major operation using the truck stop as a staging ground. His military training kicked in, analyzing angles, assessing vulnerabilities. Sarah's diner was crowded when he returned the usual mix of drivers, but with an underlying current of tension, conversations stopped when the bell above the door chimed, then resumed with visible relief. When family Amar faces. Entered Jack. Took his usual corner booth watching the parking lot through the window. Razor and his crew were back holding court at their claimed table. Their confidence was growing. A young driver hurried in his face. Pale. They just hit Tommy's rig over on Route 40, stripped his whole trailer. He's in the hospital. The news rippled through the diner. Tommy was well-liked, a 20-year veteran of the roads. This was an escalation, a message to the community. Jack's phone buzzed with a text from his old combat unit medic. Heard you've got trouble? Need backup. He typed back. Not yet, but stay ready. Sarah slid into his booth, coffee pot in hand. Her voice was low. Serious. Sheriff Thompson's hands are tied, says. Without direct evidence, he can't move against them. They're too smart for that. Jack replied, This isn't their first operation through the window. They watched Razor talking on his phone, gesturing with obvious authority. More bikes arrived, their riders showing deference to the leader. The hierarchy was becoming clear. They're setting up distribution networks. Jack explained, using legitimate trucking routes as cover. We're just the first phase. Sarah's expression hardened. This is our home, Jack. Our community. I know Jack's voice carried the weight of experience, and we're not giving it up without a fight. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot as Jack made his way back to his rig. A familiar tension crept into his muscles. The same feeling he'd had before operations in Afghanistan. His mind was already formulating plans, drawing on years of combat experience. His CB radio crackled with chatter. Other drivers were sharing information, coordinating movements. The trucking community was mobilizing in its own way, preparing for whatever came next as night fell over Golden Valley. The Steel Serpent's presence grew more obvious. Their bikes patrolled the access roads, monitoring traffic. They were establishing control, but they'd made a critical mistake. They thought they were dealing with isolated truckers, easy targets for intimidation. They didn't understand that this community had its own warriors, its own code of honor, and they certainly didn't understand that they'd awakened something in Jack Reeves, a sight of him that he'd left behind in the dust of Afghan, and in his rig, Jack began making calls first to his old combat unit members, now scattered across the country, but still bound by shared experience, then to the network of veteran drivers who understood what it meant to stand together against a common threat. The Steel Serpents had chosen Golden Valley as their battleground. Soon they would learn that some battles aren't won by the side with the most muscle, but by the side with the strongest bonds. And as Jack watched the bikers through his mirror, he allowed himself a grim smile. They thought they were the predators in this situation. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Dawn broke over Golden Valley with an eerie calm. The Steel Serpents had spent the night establishing their presence, small groups of riders patrolling the access roads like wolves circling their prey. But something had changed in the truck. Stop's atmosphere, the prey, was starting to bite. Back. Jack's rig sat in its usual spot. Its chrome finish catching the early light inside the cabin, he reviewed messages from his growing network of allies. Tommy's attack had sparked a response throughout. The trucking community veterans, former law enforcement, and long-time drivers were coordinating their movements, sharing information. The diner's door chimed as Sarah stepped out carrying 2 cups of coffee. She climbed up to Jack's cab, her expression grave. "They're getting bold at 2 more rigs hit last night on Route 15. Drivers roughed up pretty bad. Jack accepted the coffee, his face hardening. They're testing boundaries, seeing how much they can get away with Sheriff Thompson still dragging his feet. Says his hands are tied without solid evidence." A group of steel serpents rumbled into the lot. Razor at their head, their numbers had grown overnight. At least 20 bikes. Now they moved with the confidence of predators who believed they owned the territory. Razor dismounted, stretching deliberately as he surveyed the parking lot, his eyes locked onto Jack's rig. A cold smile playing at his lips, he started walking over his boots, crunching on the gravel. "Time to go," Sarah Jack said, quietly. She slipped out of the cab just as Razor reached the driver's side. The biker's leather vest bore new patches, marks of authority within the gang. He'd been promoted, probably after Tommy's attack. "Nice morning for a drive." Razor called up shame of about what happened to your friend Tommy. "Roads can be dangerous these days." Jack's voice remained neutral. "Something you want, just sharing some friendly advice. Smart drivers are learning to cooperate with the new management around here. Pay a little protection fee. Follow some simple rules about cargo inspection." Not interested. Razor's smile vanished. "Wasn't asking, soldier boy. Way I hear it, you're carrying some valuable cargo today." Be a shame if the sound of diesel engines cut him off. 3 massive rigs pulled into the lot. Their drivers, clearly veterans from their bearing, they positioned their trucks with military precision, boxing in the steel serpent's bikes. Jack allowed himself a small smile. "You were saying?" Razor's face darkened. "You think a few trucks scare us? We own these roads now. Might want to check your math on that." More engines roared to life. The overnight truckers who'd seemed to be sleeping in their cabs were suddenly alert, their rigs rumbling with barely contained power. The lot had become a chessboard, and the steel serpents were rapidly losing position. Razor keyed. His radio barking orders, more bikes roared in from the access roads, but they found themselves navigating a maze of strategically parked trucks the veterans had used their rigs to create, choke points controlling the space with practiced efficiency inside the diner. Sarah watched through the window as more trucks arrived. Her regulars had spread the word. Golden Valley was drawing a line in the sand. The breakfast crowd included more than a few faces she recognized from military bumper stickers and veterans' patches. Razor's cool facade cracked slightly as he realized the shifting dynamics his gang was no longer facing. Isolated truckers, but an organized resistance, and at its center was Jack Reeves, whose calm demeanor spoke of someone intimately familiar with tactical situations. "This isn't over," Razor snarled, turning back to his bike. "You just made a serious mistake." "No," Jack replied, his voice carrying across the lot. "The mistake was thinking you could threaten this community without consequences." The steel serpents retreated, their bikes weaving between the parked trucks, but their departure felt less like surrender and more like tactical withdrawal. They'd lost this round, but the war was just beginning. As the sound of motorcycles faded, the truckers gathered in Sarah's diner. Jack found himself at the center of a group of veterans, each bringing their own experience to the table. "They'll be back." Tom Martinez warned, his Marine Corps tattoo visible beneath his rolled sleeve, "and they'll bring serious numbers. That's what we're counting on." Jack replied, "Sometimes you have to let the enemy think they're winning to expose their whole operation." Maps appeared on the table's truck routes, delivery schedules, known steel serpent sightings. The veterans fell into familiar patterns, analyzing terrain and plotting strategy. Sarah watched from behind her counter, reminded of war rooms she'd seen in movies. Jack's phone buzzed with a message from Bobby Chen. DEA is interested. Your friends made a mistake with Tommy. Feds are connecting dots. Now the pieces were falling into place. The steel serpents had revealed part of their hand. But Jack knew from experience that criminal organizations this size had deeper roots. They needed to expose the whole network. We're not just protecting our roots, he explained to the gathered drivers. We're building a trap. Every attack they make, every shipment they hit, creates a pattern. We just need to help the authorities see it. Sarah refilled coffee cups. As the planning continued, the diner had become a command center with drivers coordinating routes and veterans sharing tactical expertise. The truckers' network was transforming into something more organized, more purposeful. Outside, the morning sun climbed higher, burning away the last shadows from Golden Valley's lot. The Steel Serpent's retreat had changed something fundamental in the atmosphere. Fear was being replaced by determination, isolation by unity. Jack watched through the window as more trucks arrived. Each driver checked in, received their briefing, and took their position in the growing resistance. The Steel Serpents had unwittingly awakened something powerful. The Brotherhood of the Road, reinforced by veteran steel in his mind. Another memory surfaced: his commanding officer in Afghanistan, teaching him about the power of united resistance. Sometimes the old soldier had said the strongest weapon isn't the biggest gun, but the unbreakable bonds between those who stand together. The battle for Golden Valley was entering a new phase. The Steel Serpent would return, probably with overwhelming force, but they'd find more than just trucks and drivers waiting for them. They'd find an army. The afternoon sun beat down on Golden Valley truck stop as Jack Reeves finished securing his cargo. 3 days had passed since the confrontation with the Steel Serpents, and the tension hung heavy in the air. The gang's absence was more threatening than their presence. Everyone knew they were planning something big. A commotion erupted from the far end of the lot. Shout for help cut through the diesel. Rumblejack's combat. Medic. Instincts kicked in before his mind could process the scene. One of Razor's men was on the ground, clutching his chest, his fellow bikers standing around helplessly. Without hesitation, Jack grabbed his medical bag from the cab and ran toward the crowd. The fallen biker, young, probably mid-20s, was showing classic signs of a cardiac event. Jack's training took over as he knelt beside the man. Everyone back up, give him air. His voice carried the authority of battlefield command. Even the other Steel Serpents responded. Stepping back instinctively, Jack's hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking vital signs, assessing symptoms. The young biker's eyes were wide with panic, his breathing shallow and rapid. "What's his name?" Jack demanded. Joey, one of the bikers, answered. "He's been complaining about chest pain all morning." Sarah appeared with the truck stop's emergency kit. She'd worked enough accidents to know the drill, seamlessly becoming Jack's assistant. As he worked, Joey, "Listen to me." Jack's voice was calm, steady. "I'm a combat medic. I'm going to help you, but you need to focus on my voice." The next few minutes were a blur of professional efficiency. Jack administered emergency first aid while Sarah called for an ambulance. The other bikers watched in stunned silence as their enemy worked to save their friend's life. "Nitro spray." Jack called out, and Sarah handed it to him without hesitation. They worked together like a well-oiled machine, their previous conflicts forgotten in the face of a life-threatening emergency. The ambulance was still, 10 minutes out. When Joey's condition worsened, Jack read the signs immediately. The situation was deteriorating fast. "We're not waiting." He decided, help me get him into my rig. I can have him at Carson City Memorial in 12 minutes. The steel serpents looked at each other. UNC? Lie. But Joey's labored breathing made the decision for them. They helped Jack lift their companion into the truck's cab. I'm going with him. One of the bikers insisted. Joey's brother, by the look of their matching tattoos. Jack nodded. Get in the rest of. You follow if you want, but stay clear of my rig. I'm going to be moving fast. The big Peterbilt roared to life. Jack grabbed the CB radio. This is Ghost Rider running emergency medical to Carson City. Need a path over. The response was immediate. Trucks along the route began coordinating, creating a rolling blockade to clear the highway. The same drivers who'd been preparing to fight the steel serpents were now helping save one of their own. Joey's brother watched in amazement as Jack handled the rig with precision, while simultaneously monitoring his patient condition. You've done this before too many times. Jack replied, his mind flashing back to similar runs in Afghanistan. Keep talking to him. Keep him conscious. The highway became a coordinated dance of trucks and motorcycles. The steel serpents followed Jack's rig, while other truckers blocked civilian traffic, creating a dedicated emergency lane. Old rivalries were temporarily forgotten in service of saving a life. They made it to Carson City Memorial in 11 minutes. Bobby Chen was waiting with a trauma team, alerted by Sarah's calls. They whisked Joey away to emergency care, leaving Jack and the bikers in an awkward silence. You didn't have to help him, Joey's brother said. Finally, yes, I did. Jack's voice was firm. That's what medics do. Hours passed in the waiting room. More steel serpents arrived, along with truckers from Golden Valley Natural battle lines began to form until Razor himself walked in. The gang leader surveyed the scene, his eyes finally settling on Jack. Doc says you saved his life. Razor said Joey's stable would have died if you hadn't acted fast. Jack met his gaze steadily. Good to hear. Don't think this changes anything between us. Didn't expect it to. But something had changed. Both men could feel it. The simple act of saving a life had shifted. The dynamic. Complicated. The narrative. The steel serpents weren't just faceless enemies anymore, and Jack wasn't just another obstacle in their path. Sarah arrived with coffee. For everyone, truckers and bikers alike, the waiting room had become neutral ground, a temporary truce forged in the crucible of emergency. Your people cleared that highway like magic. Joey's brother said, accepting a cup, never seen anything like it. That's what community means, Sarah replied. Taking care of our own. Even when our own are supposed to be enemies, asked a hint of challenge in his voice. Especially. Then Jack answered, because that's when it matters most. The sun was setting when Joey's doctor finally emerged with good news. The young biker would recover fully thanks to the rapid response and treatment, as the steel serpent celebrated Jack quietly. Slipped away. Sarah caught up with him in the parking lot. You know, this doesn't end their operation. They'll still come out after the shipments, probably. Jack agreed, but now they know who they're really dealing with, and sometimes that's enough to change the whole game. The drive back to Golden Valley was quiet. Jack's CB radio crackled with messages from other drivers, congratulating him on the save. But his mind was already turning to the larger conflict ahead. The steel serpents had seen another side of the trucking community. Today, they'd witnessed the power of coordination, the strength of unity, the depth of commitment to helping others. It wouldn't stop their criminal enterprise, but it had complicated their narrative and, in Jack's experience, complicated. Narratives often led to unexpected opportunities. The next morning brought a different kind of tension to Golden Valley truck stop. News of Joey's rescue had spread through both the trucking and biker communities, creating an uneasy atmosphere of respect mixed with suspicion. Jack Reeves sat in his usual booth, studying a tablet filled with delivery schedules and route maps. Sarah slid a fresh cup of coffee across the table. Razor's people have been quiet since yesterday. Too quiet. Jack replied, his eyes not leaving the screen. They're regrouping, adapting their strategy. The diner's door chimed as Tom Martinez entered, followed by several other veteran drivers. They carried themselves with military bearing, consciously falling into tactical positioning around the booth. The breakfast crowd pretended not to notice. The impromptu council of war got word from up north. Tom reported, his voice low steel. Serpents are consolidating, calling in members from other chapters, whatever they're planning. It's Big Jack nodded, pulling up a map on his tablet. Red dots marked recent, hijacking attempts forming a pattern that only a trained eye could see. They're not just after random shipments. Look at the distribution. The veterans leaned in, their expressions hardening as they recognized the tactical significance. The Steel Serpents weren't just targeting valuable cargo. They were systematically mapping out the entire medical supply chain. They're building a parallel distribution network. Jack explained, using our legitimate routes as cover for their own operations. The hijackings are just phase 1. Bobby Chen's voice crackled through Jack's phone on speaker. DEA is interested now. Joey's incident gave us an opening. They're looking at hospital records, tracking unusual patterns and supply requests outside. More trucks began arriving. Word had spread through the driver's network about a gathering at Golden Valley. Sarah watched from behind the counter as her parking lot filled with rigs from across 3 states. We've got support rolling in, Tom. Reported veterans, former LA enforcement, experienced drivers. Everyone's tired of these gangs thinking they can take over the roads. Jack's tablet pinged with new intelligence. They hit another shipment last night, but something was different. They knew exactly what they were looking for. Specific medications. Nothing else touched inside information. Sarah concluded someone in the supply chain is working with them. The bell above the door chimed again. Heads turned as Joey's brother entered alone and unarmed. He walked directly to Jack's booth, ignoring the hostile stares from the other drivers. Need to talk. He said quietly, not everyone in the club agrees with what Razor's doing. Some of us still remember what it means to have honor. Jack studied him for a moment, reading the conflict in the younger man's face. Sit down. The biker slid into the booth. His discomfort evident. Razor's lost sight of what the club used to be about ever since these new connections came in with their big plans and promised payoffs. What new connections? Jack's voice was? Careful neutral guys in suits, professional types. They're the ones giving orders, now telling us which shipments to hit, what to look for. Razor's, just the muscle. The veterans exchanged glances. This confirmed their suspicions the Steel Serpents were just one part of a larger operation. Sarah appeared with coffee for everyone, her presence helping to ease the tension. So what's their next move? Joey's brother hesitated. They're planning something big. All I know is it involves multiple shipments, coordinated hits. They're calling in every member they can trust. Jack's tactical mind was already processing the implications they'll need. Staging areas, safe houses, distribution points, we can help with that. Tom offered every trucker from here to the coast knows the hidden spots. The unofficial routes we can map their whole operation. The diner had grown quiet. Other drivers pretending not to listen while catching every word. The atmosphere was charged with purpose. This wasn't just about protecting shipments anymore. It was about taking back their roads. Jack pulled up another map on his tablet. We need to coordinate with law enforcement, but carefully too much official attention, and they'll go to ground. I can help, Joey's brother offered. Not all of us are willing to watch the club become something we never signed up for. The planning continued through the morning. Drivers came and went, each adding their piece to the growing intelligence network. Sarah's Diner became a command center with veterans applying military strategy to civilian logistics. Outside, the sun climbed higher over Golden Valley. Trucks continued to arrive, their drivers bringing reports from every major route in the region. The Steel Serpents had wanted to take over these roads, but they'd failed to understand one crucial fact. The highways already had an army. Jack's phone buzzed with a message from his old combat unit ready. "When you need us, just say the word." He looked around the diner at the gathered faces, truckers, veterans, even a former enemy willing to stand against corruption. The Steel Serpents had built their operation on intimidation and force, but they were about to learn that true strength came from something deeper. They'll make their move. Soon Jack announced to the group, when they do, we'll be ready. Not just to stop them, but to expose the whole operation. Sarah watched from her counter as the planning continued. In all her years running the truck stop, she'd never seen anything like this. Golden Valley had become more than just a rest stop. It was becoming a symbol of resistance. The battle for the highways was about to enter a new phase, but this time the truckers wouldn't be fighting alone. They'd be fighting as an army. The storm broke 3 days later. It started with a single message over the CB radio, Ghost Rider. They're moving multiple groups, all directions. This is not a drill. Jack Reeves was already in his rig engine. Idling the past 72 hours had been a choreographed dance of preparation. Every truck in the lot was positioned with military precision, creating defensive lanes and emergency escape routes. Sarah's voice crackled over for the radio. "Just got word from Highway Patrol. Steel Serpent spotted on routes 15, 40, and 78. At least 60 bikes. They're trying to split our response." Jack analyzed his combat training, kicking and hit multiple targets simultaneously through his mirrors. He watched Tom Martinez's rig roll into position, followed by 3 more veterans. The truck stop had become a fortress, with every approach covered by experienced drivers, ready to move 2 medical supply trucks leaving Carson City in 10 minutes. Bobby Chen reported through the secure channel they'd established regular route-heavy cargo. "They're the bait," Jack keyed. "His radio!" "Remember the plan? Let them think they're winning. We need to expose the whole operation." The first wave of bikes appeared on the horizon, their engines, a distant growl growing louder. Razor led the group, his chrome bike catching the morning sun. But something was different. Suited men in dark SUVs followed the bikers at a discreet distance. Eyes on the suits. Tom's voice came through, looking awful professional for a gang operation. Joey's brother, monitoring from inside the diner, confirmed their suspicions. Those aren't club members. They're the real bosses. The Steel Serpents spread out along the highway, taking up tactical positions they'd learned from their previous encounters, showing a level of coordination that spoke of professional training. Razor's voice boomed through a megaphone. "Last chance. Reeves, stand down and let us through. Nobody needs to get hurt today." Jack's response was to edge, his rig forward, blocking the main access road. Other trucks moved in concert, creating a wall of steel and chrome. The message was clear. Nothing was getting through without a fight. The first clash came at the eastern checkpoint. A group of bikers tried to force their way through, only to find themselves boxed in by coordinated truck movements. The veterans had turned their rigs into mobile barriers, controlling the battlefield with diesel-powered precision contact on RAD-40. The radio crackled with urgency. They're hitting the medical transport, that's their play. Jack realized this is a diversion. Tom, take command here. I'm moving to intercept his Peterbilt roared to life. 18. Wheels of American muscle responding to the emergency, other trucks fell in behind him, a convoy of rolling thunder moving to protect their own. The suited men watched from their SUVs, speaking urgently into phones. They hadn't expected this level of resistance, this degree of coordination. Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. Jack. DEA just confirmed. Those suits are connected to Pharmac Corp Industries. This goes all the way to the top. The pieces clicked into place. The steel serpents weren't just hijacking shipments. They were part of a corporate scheme to control the medical supply chain, create shortages, drive up prices, profit from desperation. The battle spread across 3 highways, trucks and bikes, engaged in a deadly dance of speed and strategy. The veterans applied military tactics to civilian vehicles, using their rigs to herd and control the bikers' movements. Jack's convoy reached the medical transport just as the steel serpents moved to intercept it. But instead of finding an easy target, the hijackers ran headlong into a wall of coordinated resistance. Now Jack's command sent trucks moving with precision, blocking escape routes, while leaving the gang members only one path straight toward the waiting DEA teams. Razor realized too late that he'd LED his people into a trap. The suits and their SUVs were already retreating, abandoning their muscle to face the consequences alone. You planned. This Razor's voice was filled with grudging respect as law enforcement moved in the medical transports. The positioning, all of it. You forgot something important. Jack replied over the radio. These aren't just highways. They're our home, and we protect our own. The operation unfolded like a military campaign, while local law enforcement dealt with the steel serpents. Federal agents moved on the corporate offices, the evidence trail LED straight to the top. Executives, shareholders, all profiting from orchestrated shortages, Sarah watched from Golden Valley as reports came in her truck stop had become the center of something much bigger than a local conflict. It had become a symbol of what communities could do when they stood together. The suited men were long gone, but their phones and vehicles had provided the evidence needed. The steel serpent role as corporate mercenaries was exposed. Their operation unraveled by the very people they thought would be easy targets. Joey's brother stood with the truckers watching his former gang members being processed by law enforcement. The club lost its way. He said, quietly, forgot what it meant to have honor. There's always a way back, Jack replied, remembering his own journey from combat medic to trucker. If you're willing to stand for something bigger than yourself. As the sun set over Golden Valley, the trucking community began to realize the full scope of what they'd accomplished. They hadn't just stopped a gang. They'd exposed a corporate conspiracy, protected vital medical supplies, and reminded everyone that the strength of America's highways lay in the hearts of those who drove them. But Jack knew this wasn't the end. Somewhere other corporations were watching. Other criminals were planning the roads would need protecting. Tomorrow and the day after that. And thanks to what happened at Golden Valley, they'd be ready. The aftermath of the highway battle brought more questions than answers. Jack Reeves sat in his rig reviewing encrypted FES. Bobby Chen had sent over Pharmac Corp Industries was just the tip of the iceberg. Their connection to the steel serpents went deeper than anyone had suspected. Sarah climbed into the passenger seat. Her face. Grim, just got word from my contact at the State Medical Board. 3 more hospitals reporting critical shortages. Someone still pulling strings. They planned for this. Jack replied. Scrolling through shipping manifests, Pharmac Corp was a shell. The real players are still out there. The truck stop had become a hub of intelligence gathering. Drivers brought reports from every state, pieces of a puzzle that painted a disturbing picture. The Steel Serpents had been mercenaries hired muscle for a network that spanned the entire medical supply chain. Tom Martinez burst into the lot, his rig still running. They hit Bobby's hospital professional job. Not bikers this time, military contractors. They knew exactly what they were doing. Jack's jaw tightened. The tactics described were familiar. He'd seen similar operations in Afghanistan. They're cleaning house, eliminating evidence. His phone buzzed with a text from Joey's brother, Razor. Talking says the suits had insurance dirt on everyone, including you. The implications sent a chill through the cab Jack had made. Enemies during his combat tours, people who wouldn't hesitate to use his past against him. Sarah noticed his expression. What? Aren't you telling me? Jack, my last deployment. He said quietly. We uncovered a smuggling operation, military supplies being diverted, sold on the black market, never found out who was really behind it, and now they found you. A black SUV appeared at the truck stop entrance, its windows tinted. Beyond legal limits, Jack recognized the type. Private security. Probably ex-military. They were being watched inside the diner. That regular crowd had thinned. Fear was creeping back in as news spread of sophisticated attacks replacing the crude tactics of the Steel Serpents. This wasn't just about hijacking anymore. It was about control. Bobby Chen's voice came through Jack's secure line, tense and hurried. Found something in the hospital records past 5 years, specific medications going missing. Always the same ones, always covered up by paperwork. Who signed off on the paperwork? That's the thing. Signatures. Trace back to a medical supply consulting firm. MedSecure Solutions. Jack's blood ran cold. He knew that name from Afghanistan, a contractor that had appeared after the smuggling operation went bust. Tom gathered the veterans in Sarah's back office, away from prying eyes. The room had become a war council with maps and documents covering every surface. They're squeezing supply lines. Tom explained, pointing to shipping routes, creating artificial shortages, then swooping in with emergency supplies at premium prices, classic war, profiteering, just on American soil. Jack studied the pattern. These aren't random targets. They're building a monopoly state-biased state. The Steel Serpents were just their first attempt at muscle. Sarah's phone lit up with a news alert. Pharmac Corp CEO found dead, apparent suicide. Loose ends. Jack muttered. They're cleaning house outside. More black SUVs appeared. The private security firms were getting bolder, their presence a clear message. The trucking community's victory over the Steel Serpents had drawn attention from people who preferred to operate in shadows. Joey's brother arrived with more intel from his former gang contacts. Razor's protection and custody just disappeared. Federal marshals say they never arrived to take him. The pieces were falling into place. This wasn't just corporate corruption, it was a shadow war for control of America's medical supply lines. The Steel Serpents had been pawns, and Golden Valley had stumbled into something far bigger. Jack's old combat instinct screamed warnings. The enemy was no longer a biker gang. It was a network of corporate mercenaries, corrupt officials, and professional killers. They had resources, connections, and nothing to lose. We need to move fast, he told the gathered veterans. They'll try to discredit us first, then eliminate the threat. We've got 48 hours. At most. Sarah watched the black SUVs through her diner window. This is bigger than us. Jack, maybe we should let the feds handle it. The feds are compromised. Tom cut in notice how they're always one step behind someone's feeding them bad intel. Jack's phone buzzed again, a message from his old combat unit. You were right about. MedSec Cure goes all the way back to Kandahar. Watch your 6, the sun set over Golden Valley, casting long shadows across the lot. The truckers watch the security vehicles circle like vultures, each pass a reminder that they were playing a deadlier game now. But they had something the enemy didn't understand. A network of their own, thousands of drivers, veterans, and honest workers connected by CB radio and shared purpose. The highways were their domain, and they knew every back road and hidden stop. They think they can intimidate us. Jack told the gathered allies, but they forgot something important. We've seen worse. We've fought worse, and we're not alone. The battle for America's medical supplies was entering a new phase. The enemy was sophisticated, well-funded, and invisible, but they were about to learn what happened when the Badasan NBM probao. Zidday Ashindi, Aginara Comenideminani might Masaber may be in the Riborio, Tari Nidasa Pasian and Asham Tashan Toy Dasa the Dimita Sea. Flashy far, Golden Valley had become more than a truck stop. It had become a symbol of resistance, and symbols Jack knew from experience were bulletproof. The first real threat came at dawn. Jack Reeves found the envelope on his truck's seat photos from his last deployment surveillance shots of his daily routes medical records that were supposed to be classified. The message was clear. They knew everything inside Sarah's diner. The morning crowd had been replaced by grim-faced veterans and drivers. The black SUVs had multiplied overnight, their occupants taking photos, noting license plates, making calls. They hit 3 more drivers last night. Tom reported spreading photos across the counter. Professional jobs. No witnesses, no evidence, just empty trailers and scrambled tracking systems. Sarah locked the diner's door, flipping the sign to closed. Got a call from my insurance company. They're canceling our coverage, said we've become high risk. Jack studied the surveillance photos from the envelope. They're trying to isolate us, cut off support, create pressure points, standard corporate takeover tactics. Bobby Chen's voice crackled through a burner phone. They're in the hospital system, now administrative access, security protocols, everything. Someone's erasing records of the missing supplies. The veterans gathered around Jack's booth, their faces reflecting the seriousness of the situation. These men had faced bullets and bombs, but corporate warfare was different. The enemy was invisible, attacking through paperwork and pixels. Med Secure Solutions is expanding, Tom announced, pulling up news articles. Just got government contracts for emergency medical distribution. They're positioning themselves as the solution to the shortages they created. Jack's phone lit up with a message from Joey's brother, Razor's dead prison suicide. But he left something for you. Attached was a video file security footage from Afghanistan showing military supplies being loaded onto unmarked trucks, the same trucks now spotted around Golden Valley. They're not just after control. Jack realized they're building an empire using legitimate businesses to hide illegal operations. The Steel Serpents were just their trial run. Sarah watched another black SUV circle the lot. We're running out of time. They'll come for us, directly. Next, let them come. Tom growled. We've got something they don't. Nothing left to lose. The pressure mounted through the day. Drivers reported being followed. Their families photographed their routes. Compromised bank accounts were frozen. Licenses, questioned records, mysteriously altered. Jack's satellite phone buzzed his old commanding officer speaking in code. Remember, Kandahar? Same players, different game. They've got people inside every agency. Watch the medical board meetings. The pieces clicked together. Next week's state, Medical board meeting would approve emergency protocols for supply chain management. MedSecure was positioned to take control of the entire system. "We've got 6 days," Jack told the gathered allies after that. "They'll have legal authority to control every medical shipment in the state." Bobby's voice cut through the static. "They're moving supplies out of the hospital. Tonight, armed escorts, official paperwork creating more shortages to justify the emergency protocols." Outside, the black SUVs had been joined by unmarked vans, professional mercenaries trying to look casual, failing to hide their military bearing. The enemy was done with subtle threats. Sarah received another call. The health department wanted to conduct an emergency inspection of her diner. The noose was tightening. "They think they can pressure us into backing down," she said, her voice hard. "They don't know this community." Jack studied the photos from his envelope again. They're playing a corporate game, numbers, spreadsheets, plausible deniability, but they're about to learn something important. "What's that?" Tom asked. "Some things can't be bought. Some people can't be broken." Jack pulled out a map of the state's medical facilities, and some fights are worth losing everything. For the veterans nodded understanding in their eyes. They'd all faced moments like this before when the mission mattered more than survival. Joey's brother arrived with more intel. They're planning something big, multiple shipments all at once, creating chaos to justify their takeover. The sun set over Golden Valley, casting long shadows across the lot. The black SUVs continued their patrol, their headlights sweeping across faces and license plates. But they weren't watching alone. Every trucker who passed through carried word of what was happening. The highways were awakening. Drivers shared stories at every stop, passed messages through coded CB chatter. A network was forming, invisible to corporate surveillance, but strong as steel. 6 days, Jack reminded his allies to stop a corporate takeover, expose a criminal empire, and save the medical supply system. Sarah smiled grimly. "They think they can beat us with money and threats. Time to show them what real strength looks like." The battle for Golden Valley had become a war for the soul of American highways. But as the enemy would soon learn, some things weren't for sale, and some people couldn't be bought at any price. The war room was set up in Sarah's basement. Maps covered the walls, computers tracked shipment routes, and burner phones connected a network that stretched across 12 states. With 4 days until the medical board meeting, Golden Valley had become command central for an operation. Unlike anything the highways had seen, Jack Reeves stood before the gathered allies, veterans, drivers, and even former steel serpents who chose an honor over profit, MedSecure plans to create a crisis. We're going to give them one they don't expect. Tom Martins pulled up satellite images on a laptop. They're staging equipment here, and here, military-grade stuff. These aren't Ren AOPs anymore. They're bringing in professional contractors. Good, Jack replied. Professionals follow. Patterns. We can predict. Bobby Chen's voice came through the secure line. Hospital boards meeting tonight. Emergency protocols are already drawn up. MedSecures. People wrote them. The basement grew quiet as Jack outlined the plan. It was audacious, borderline insane, but it carried the precision of military strategy backed by years of combat experience. "They expect us to protect the shipments," he explained, "so we'll do the opposite. It will make them think they've won." Sarah studied the map, understanding dawning in her eyes. "We're going to let them take everything, almost. Everything," Jack corrected, "while they're focused on the decoys. We'll be tracking their real operation. Every truck, every warehouse, every corrupt official." Joey's brother, now their inside man with the remaining bikers, nodded appreciatively. A trap inside. A trap just like Razor walked into the operation would require perfect timing. Regular drivers would run normal routes carrying legitimate shipments, but hidden among them would be veterans with special cargo trackers, cameras, and enough evidence to bring down an empire. They've got people inside the FBI, DEA, and state agencies, Tom warned. Who can we trust with the evidence? Jack pulled up a photo on his phone. His old commanding officer, now working with a federal task force on corporate corruption, someone who's been hunting these guys since Afghanistan. Outside the black SUVs continued their patrol, watching the truck stops' regular activity. They reported movement of rigs, standard deliveries. Nothing suspicious. Exactly what Jack wanted them to see. Sarah's phone buzzed. The health department inspection was scheduled for tomorrow. They're moving faster than we expected. No, Jack corrected. They're moving exactly how we need them. To pressure makes people sloppy. Sloppy people make mistakes. The planning continued through the night. Every driver had their role. Every route was calculated. Every contingency covered. They weren't just fighting for Golden Valley anymore. They were fighting for every hospital, every patient, every community that depended on medical supplies. Bobby's intelligence painted a clear picture. MedSecure had warehouses ready, distribution networks in place. The moment they got control, prices would skyrocket. People would die waiting for medications they couldn't afford. Remember? Jack told the gathered allies, we're not just up against guns and guards, we're up against algorithms, spreadsheets, and corporate lawyers. They think they've got everything calculated. What didn't they calculate? Someone asked us. Jack's voice, car carried absolute certainty. They calculated profit margins and risk assessments. They never calculated the strength of people fighting for something bigger than themselves. The next phase began at dawn. Trucks rolled out carrying normal loads, but each driver was wired every route, tracked. The enemy surveillance followed obvious targets, missing the real operation hidden in plain sight. Sarah's health inspection came and went. They found nothing. She'd been running a clean operation for 15 years, but she noticed them taking photos of delivery schedules, driver logs, anything that could help track shipments. Let them look, Jack said. When she reported back, everything they think they know is part of the trap. The black SUVs multiplied their occupants, growing bolder. They photographed drivers openly. Now followed trucks beyond the county line. Their confidence was growing exactly as planned. Joy's brother brought the final piece of intelligence MedSecure's, moving their main force in. Tonight, they think they've got us mapped, tracked, and ready for take-on. Jack gathered the core team for final briefing. Each person knew their role, understood the risks. There would be no second chances, no room for error. 3 days until the medical board meeting. He reminded them 3 days to spring. A trap. Years in the making. 3 days to show them what these highways are really made of. Sarah looked around at the gathered faces. Truckers, veterans, community members, ready to risk everything. They think they can buy these roads, she said quietly. Time to show them some things aren't for sale. The sun set on Golden Valley, but the truck stop hummed with hidden energy. Tomorrow the enemy would make their move, thinking they had the upper hand. They had no idea what was really coming. The storm broke at midnight. MedSecure's forces moved with military precision, black vehicles converging on predetermined targets across 3 states. Their intelligence was perfect, their timing exact. Every major medical shipment was tracked, every route calculated. They thought they knew everything. Jack Reeves watched from his rig as the operation unfolded. Emergency calls flooded dispatch, hijackings, diverted shipments. Entire convoys seemingly disappeared exactly as planned. Ghost Rider to all units. He spoke into an encrypted channel. Phase 1 is live. Let them take the bait across the highways. Trusted drivers played their roles perfectly. Some resisted. Others surrendered. Each fallen shipment was a breadcrumb, leading MedSecure's forces deeper into the trap. Sarah's voice came through secure channels. 4 black SUVs just hit the Carson City convoy. They're moving the supplies to Site C. Perfect. Jack replied, they're following the trail. Tom, are you in position? Roger. That got eyes on their main convoy military contract. ROR heavy weapons. They're not messing around. The night air crackled with tension. Police channels were suspiciously quiet. MedSecure's influence at work. But other frequencies hummed with hidden activity as veterans and trusted drivers moved into position. Bobby. Chen reported from the hospital they're cleaning out our emergency supplies, official paperwork, corporate seals. Everything looks legitimate. Let them take it all. Jack instructed the real shipments are already gone. The enemy's confidence grew with each successful hijacking. Their tactical teams moved faster, bolder, thinking they had the trucking community on the run. Black SUVs prowled the highways like wolves, picking off targets at will. Joey's brother's voice cut through the static. Main force is moving to the warehouse district. They're consolidating the take. Jack allowed himself a grim smile. The enemy was executing their plan perfectly, exactly as he'd predicted. Years of military experience had taught him that overconfident opponents made the best targets. Sarah watched from Golden Valley as trucks limped in, drivers reporting losses with carefully concealed satisfaction. Each defeat was a victory, each setback part of the larger strategy. MedSecure stock is already rising. Bobby reported they're positioning themselves as the solution to the crisis they created. The operation continued through the night. Professional hijackers hit target after target. Their coordinated strikes a testament to military training. But they never noticed the real operation happening in their shadows. Veteran drivers moving unmarked vehicles through back roads and forgotten routes tracked every MedSecure movement. Each stolen shipment carried hidden surprises, GPS trackers, cameras, and enough evidence to expose the entire network they've hit. 30% of our visible inventory. Tom reported moving exactly as predicted. Jack checked his watch. 2 hours until dawn time. For Phase 2. Let's show them what they're really up against. The first hint that something was wrong came at a MedSecure checkpoint. Their guards found themselves suddenly surrounded by empty trucks. Drivers vanished into the night. Then another checkpoint went dark, and another. They're realizing something's off. Sarah reported, black SUVs are changing patterns, trying to establish new perimeters. Too late. Jack replied, the net's already in place. The enemy's command structure began to show cracks. Their perfect operation was revealing weak points, vulnerabilities born of overconfidence. Orders became confused. Communications tangled. Bobby's voice carried satisfaction. Hospital administrators are asking questions. The paperwork isn't holding up like they promised. Dawn approached as MedSecure's forces consolidated their takes and designated warehouses there. Controllers watched through surveillance feeds, calculating profits and market impacts. Everything looked successful. Then the first warehouse went dark. Not with violence or confrontation. It simply vanished from their monitors, along with all record of its contents. What they don't know. Jack told his allies is that while they were watching us, we were watching them, every truck, every route, every corrupt official, and now they're the ones being hunted. Tom finished. The sun rose over Golden Valley, revealing highways that seemed strangely empty. MedSecure's forces held their stolen shipments, celebrated their victory, never realizing they were sitting in the center of a trap decades in the making. Jack keyed. His radio one final time. All units execute Phase 3, show them what these highways are really made of. The real battle for America's medical supplies was about to begin. Dawn painted. The highway as red as Jack Reeves's plan, snapped shut like a steel trap. Med-Secure's forces found themselves caught in a web of their own, making their stolen shipments becoming anchors that held them in place. Now Jack's command crackled through secure channels, seemingly abandoned warehouses, came alive with activity. Veterans emerged from hiding their movements, reflecting years of combat experience. Every exit was covered, every escape route blocked by strategically placed trucks. Team 1 in position. Tom reported they've got no idea we're here inside the main warehouse. Med-Secure's tactical teams discovered their communications were dead. No signals in or out, just static, and the growing realization that something had gone very wrong. Sarah's voice carried satisfaction. FBI task force is moving in the real one this time, not their corporate puppets. The enemy's professional facade cracked, their military contractors suddenly cut off from command. And control faced a force they hadn't trained for organized veterans who knew their playbook inside and out. Bobby Chen watched through hospital security feeds as Med-Secure's administrative control crumbled. Their access codes are dead. System showing every transaction, every diverted shipment, everything. Jack's rig led a convoy of unmarked trucks toward the main facility. The real medical supplies, hidden and protected through the night, were about to reveal the true nature of Med-Secure's operation. Defense teams compromised. Joey's brother reported from his observation post, their perimeter falling apart. These guys aren't used to fighting blind. The black SUVs that had terrorized the highways now found themselves boxed in by waves of trucks. Every route they tried was blocked. Every tactic countered by drivers who knew these roads better than any corporate military force ever could remember. Jack's voice steadied his allies. We're not just fighting for shipments. We're fighting for every patient who needs these supplies. Every community these bastards tried to strangle for profit. The federal task force moved with precision, their raids coordinated through Jack's network. Each location felt like Domino's warehouses, offices, distribution centers. The evidence trail Bobby had built was bulletproof. Sarah coordinated from Gold Valley, watching the operation unfold across multiple screens. Corporate headquarters is panicking their stocks in free fall. Med-Secure's leadership, watching their empire crumble from pristine offices, finally realized their fatal mistake. They'd seen the highways as just infrastructure, the drivers as just obstacles. They'd never understood. They were dealing with a community forged by decades of trust and mutual support. Send the signal, Jack Commander, show them what they're really up against. Trucks appeared from every direction, their headlights cutting through the morning mist. Not just local drivers, reinforcements from 12 states summoned by an underground network that corporate intelligence had never detected. The enemy's remaining forces found themselves surrounded. Professional mercenaries raised their hands, realizing that their superior weapons meant nothing against this kind of overwhelming presence. Internal servers seized. Bobby reported got everything: shipping records, bribes, blackmail materials, their whole operation exposed. Jack watched through his windshield as federal agents swarmed the main warehouse. The evidence was overwhelming. Not just of hijacking, but of a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of corporate America. Medical board members are being arrested. Sarah announced the emergency protocols are dead. Regular shipments can resume. The morning sun climbed higher, revealing the true scale of the operation. Miles of trucks stood guard over captured facilities, their drivers standing proud. This wasn't just a victory over one corporation. It was a statement about the power of united communities. Joey's brother approached Jack's rig. They never saw it coming, too busy watching their screens to see what was right in front of them. "That's the thing about corporate types," Jack replied. "They think everything has a price. Never understood that some things are worth more than money." The Federal Task Force commander, Jack's old surveyed the scene with satisfaction. "Just like Kandahar," he said, "let them think they've won until it's too late to escape." Sarah emerged from her office, holding printouts of news reports already breaking across the country. Medical supply operations returning to normal, corrupted officials exposed corporate conspiracies, revealed the highway way belonged to the people again. Tom joined them, grinning. "Not bad for a bunch of truckers. Not just truckers," Jack corrected. "Warriors, every single one of us." The sun rose fully over Golden Valley, its light revealing highways filled not with fear, but with pride. MedSecure had tried to buy America's medical supply lines instead. They'd learned an expensive lesson about the true cost of underestimating the strength of united communities. The battle was over. The highways were safe. And somewhere in a corporate boardroom, other would-be conspirators were learning a vital truth. Some roads couldn't be bought, some people couldn't be broken, and some fights were worth any price. The evening sun cast long shadows across Golden Valley Truck Stop as the community gathered to reclaim their home. The black SUVs were gone, replaced by familiar rigs and the sounds of victory. Sarah's diner overflowed with drivers, veterans, and federal agents sharing coffee and swapping stories from the operation. Jack Reeves sat at his usual booth watching the celebration unfold. The day's headlines flashed across the diner television: corporate medical supply conspiracy exposed. MedSecure CEO. Arrested highways protected by trucker army. "You know," Sarah said, sliding into the booth across from him, "when you first started planning this, I thought you were crazy. Wasn't just my plan," Jack replied. Every person here played their part. Bobby Chan arrived with fresh intelligence from the hospital. Network. All diverted supplies, recovered regular deliveries resuming tonight, and get this, 3 more corporations under investigation. For similar schemes, the Federal Task Force had worked through the day documenting evidence and taking statements. The scale of MedSecure's operation stunned even veteran investigators. They'd found connections to politicians, hospital administrators, even foreign investors. Tom Martinez joined them, still wearing his tactical vest from the morning's operation final counts. In 32 warehouses, seized over 200 arrests, and enough evidence to keep federal prosecutors busy for years. Through the window, they watched as impounded MedSecure trucks were reclaimed by legitimate shipping companies. Each vehicle would be returned to its rightful purpose, delivering vital supplies to communities in need. Joey's brother entered the diner, no longer looking over his shoulder. The remaining steel serpents who'd chosen to stand with the community were being offered legitimate work with trusted shipping firms. Second chances earned through right actions at a call from Carson City Memorial. Bobby announced they're implementing new security protocols. Other hospitals are following suit. No one's going to pull this kind of scheme again. The celebration was interrupted by a breaking news. Alert federal agents had discovered MedSecure's contingency plans. Similar operations being set up in other states, other communities. But now, thanks to Golden Valley, those communities were forewarned and prepared. "We didn't just stop one conspiracy," Jack explained to the gathered crowd. "We created a blueprint for fighting back, showed people what's possible when communities stand together." Sarah watched her diner filled with unified purpose. Former enemies sat together sharing meals and making plans. The boundaries between truckers, veterans, and law enforcement had blurred, replaced by something stronger. a shared commitment to protecting. What mattered? Medical board's been completely overhauled. Tom reported new oversight committees, transparent shipping protocols. They're even talking about setting up a driver's advisory council. The highway outside hummed with normal traffic. Again, regular shipments moved freely, protected not just by bylaws and regulations, but by a network of vigilant guardians who understood the true value of their cargo. Jack's phone buzzed with messages from other communities asking for advice on setting up their own protection networks. The Golden Valley model was spreading, empowering other drivers to stand against corporate corruption. "You know, they'll try again," Sarah said quietly. "Different companies, different schemes, but the same greed. Let them try." Jack replied, "We'll be ready, and next time we won't be fighting alone." The evening deepened as stories were shared, plans made, and bonds strengthened. This wasn't just a celebration of victory. It was a commitment to remaining vigilant, to protecting the highways that connected American communities. Bobby raised his coffee cup in a toast to Golden Valley, to the community Jack corrected. Including everyone in the gesture outside, trucks continued their endless journey across America's highways, but now they moved with new purpose, new pride. They carried more than just cargo. They carried the spirit of resistance, the power of unity, and the promise that some things were worth fighting for. The battle for Golden Valley was over, but its legacy was just beginning. 3 months after MedSecure's fall, the changes across America's highways were undeniable. Jack Reeves noticed it in the little things, the way drivers coordinated their routes, the increased communication between truck stops, the new sense of purpose that pervaded the community. Golden Valley had become more than just a truck stop. Drivers detoured hundreds of miles to pass through, sharing intelligence and strengthening the network that had grown from that first stand against corruption. Sarah was expanding the diner, adding a secure communications center disguised as a simple trucker's lounge. Her coffee counter had become an informal briefing station where drivers exchanged information about suspicious activities along the routes. Another corporate outfit tried setting up in Oregon. Last week, Tom reported, during the morning briefing, didn't even last 48 hours. Local drivers had them figured out before they could establish a foothold. The changes reached far beyond security. Medical supplies moved more efficiently now, protected by a volunteer network of veteran drivers who treated each shipment as a sacred trust. Hospitals reported fewer shortages, more reliable deliveries. Bobby Chen's voice came through the newly installed secure communications system. "Just got word from the FBI task force. 3 more corporations under investigation. They're using the Golden Valley evidence as a template." Jack watched a group of new drivers receiving training from experienced veterans. The trucking community had evolved, combining traditional knowledge with tactical awareness. Every driver now understood they were part of something larger than themselves. "It's not just about moving cargo anymore," Sarah observed, joining Jack at his usual booth. "We're guardians now, protecting more than just shipments." Joey's brother, now running legitimate security for a major shipping firm, brought reports from the reformed drivers. Network former Steel Serpents members who chosen to stand with the community were becoming its most dedicated defenders. Had some corporate types sniffing around Tennessee. He reported trying to map delivery routes gather. Intelligence got shut down fast. Word spreads quick these days. The highway outside hummed with purpose. Regular traffic mixed with what Jack's old combat unit called guardian runs, protected convoys ensuring vital supplies reached communities in need. The soldiers had found a new way to serve a new mission, to fulfill Tom's SPR, out a map showing the growing network of secure routes and safe harbors, started with one truck stop standing against corruption. Now look at it. Nationwide, network of communities watching each other's backs. The federal task force had turned Golden Valley's resistance into a model for fighting corporate corruption. Other communities facing similar threats reached out for guidance, learning to protect their own supply lines, got a call from a truck stop in Texas. Sarah announced they're facing pressure from another corporation trying to control medical distributions. Asked for our playbook. Jack smiled. Share everything. The more communities that stand up, the harder it gets for these corporations to operate. The evening news still carried stories about MedSecure's fall each week, brought new revelations about the depth of their conspiracy, but more importantly, it brought stories about communities fighting back, standing together against corporate corruption. Bobby's voice crackled through the secure line. Remember those contingency plans we found in MedSecure's files? Other companies are abandoning similar schemes. Too much risk. Now the drivers are organized. The sun set over Golden Valley as trucks rolled in for the night. Each driver checked in, shared intelligence, became part of the growing network of guardians. The highways had changed, no longer just routes for commerce, but lifelines protected by dedicated defenders. You know what the real victory was? Sarah asked, watching the routine unfold. Not just stopping one corporation, it was showing people they could fight back, that communities standing together are stronger than any corporate scheme. Jack nodded. Understanding the battle for Golden Valley had sparked something larger, a movement of communities reclaiming control of their vital supply lines, protecting them not just with laws and regulations, but with unwavering commitment and shared purpose. Outside, a new driver received his first Guardian Run assignment. The veteran drivers had vetted him, trained him, made him understand the importance of his cargo. He wasn't just delivering supplies, he was carrying the trust of communities depending on those deliveries. The highways stretched out across America, but they weren't just empty roads anymore. They were connections between communities protected by people who understood their true value, and somewhere in corporate boardrooms, executives looking to exploit those highways for profit faced an uncomfortable reality. The roads belonged to the people again, and the people were standing guard. 1 year after MedSecure's fall, Jack Reeves watched the sunrise paint Golden Valley truck stop in familiar colors. The morning routine unfolded as it always had, drivers checking their rigs, Sarah's coffee brewing, the peaceful hum of engines warming up. But everything was different. Now the parking lot filled with trucks bearing subtle new markings, small symbols that identified them as part of the Guardian network. Each driver carried themselves with quiet pride, understanding their role in protecting America's vital supply lines. Hard to believe it's been a year, Sarah said, joining Jack in his usual. Booth sometimes feels like that first morning when the steel serpents rolled in feels like another lifetime, Jack replied, watching a young driver receive his route briefing from Tom. The diner had become a landmark of sorts. Drivers went out of their way to stop here, not just for Sarah's coffee, but for what Golden Valley represented. It was a symbol of what communities could achieve when they stood together. Bobby Chen's morning update came through the secure channels, medical supply networks running at peak efficiency, no shortages, no disruptions, corporate oversight committees actually doing their jobs. The highways had found their rhythm again, but it was a different beat. Now, Every route was monitored, every shipment protected not by force, but by the united purpose of people who understood what was at stake. Got another call from that truck stop in Texas. Sarah reported they drove out an investment group trying to monopolize their routes. Said they learned it all from the Golden Valley playbook Jack watched through the window as Joey's brother conducted a security briefing for new drivers. Former adversaries had become some of their strongest allies, understanding better than most the importance of standing for something larger than profit. Tom joined them, spreading out his morning intelligence reports. Corporate lawyers are calling it the Golden Valley Effect companies, thinking twice about messing with medical supply lines, too many eyes watching. Now, the victory hadn't just been about stopping one conspiracy. It had been about changing how people saw themselves, not just as drivers or veterans or community members, but as guardians of something essential. A group of truckers gathered around the counter, sharing stories from the routes. Each tale was different, but the theme was the same. Communities working together, watching out for each other, protecting. What mattered? You know what they're saying in the boardrooms. Bobby's voice carried a hint of satisfaction. They call these highways untouchable. Now too many people. Standing guard, the morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the lot. Jack remembered that first confrontation when a small truck stop dared to stand against corporate power. They'd been outnumbered, outgunned, and overwhelmed, but they'd had something money couldn't buy. It wasn't about winning a fight, Sarah mused, watching her diner fill with the morning crowd. It was about showing people they didn't have to stand alone. Outside, trucks rolled in and out, each driver acknowledging the others with newfound respect. The brotherhood of the road had evolved into something stronger, a network of guardians bound by shared purpose and unwavering commitment. A new driver, young and earnest, approached Jack's booth. "Is it true what they say about what happened here?" Jack smiled, remembering his own journey from combat, medic to highway guardian. What happened here is still happening every day, every route, every delivery. As long as there are people willing to stand together. The sun reached its full morning height, illuminating Golden Valley in all its simple glory. It wasn't much to look at, just a truck stop on a highway, a diner serving coffee, a community going about its daily routine. But it had become something more, a symbol of resistance, a beacon of hope, a reminder that some things were worth fighting for. The highways stretched out in every direction, carrying not just cargo, but the promise that united communities could stand against any threat and somewhere out. There, others were learning the same lesson, standing up, standing together, protecting. What mattered, the spirit of Golden Valley spreading like dawn across America's highways. The battle was over, but its echo lived on in every driver who understood that the roads belonged to everyone, in every community that stood together against corruption, in every guardian who carried the promise that some things weren't for sale. Jack Reeves watched another sunrise over Golden Valley, knowing that as long as people remembered what happened here, the highways would remain free, and the guardians would keep standing. Watch up next. You've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.